Hi everyone, it's your book coach Liisa Kovala here. Grab a cup of coffee and settle in for a discussion about all things writerly. I'm the author of Sister's Winter War and Surviving Studhof, my father's memories behind the death cave, and I'm an author accelerator, certified fiction, and memoir book coach. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. In this podcast, we'll take a coffee break together to chat with authors, publishers, book coaches, marketers, agents, publicists, booksellers, and many others. Welcome to Women Writing. So happy you could join us for a coffee and a chat. I'm taking a coffee break with Lori Elmquist. She's the author of several books for children, including her most recent board book, Country Baby, and her upcoming picture book, Dr. Lila Frankenstein. She is the recipient of an MA from the University of Windsor in English Literature and Creative Writing, and she's an active SCBWI and CWILL member who writes picture books, chapter books, and middle grade. Hi, Lori. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me today
I'm
on your
so thrilled. This is just a delightful thing. I've been thinking about having you on for so long. We've met years ago at a summer writing camp with Gail Anderson Dargatz was running it. And you and I, and I think maybe four other people were in attendance. And we had this lovely, lovely week working with Gail. I want to say
Manitoulin.
2016. Is that right? 20, I don't
I'm
even
not
remember.
sure. I just know it was beautiful because it was Manitoulin Island, and the first time that I really got to spend some time there,
Yeah,
walking around and exploring the beaches. And we
amazing.
looked at the planets one night.
Yes.
We took the telescope out and looked at Saturn.
Saturn, I'll never forget that. That was amazing. And her husband, Mitch, did pottery with us, which was a first for me. I'd never done anything on a wheel before. That was amazing. It was just such a great time. And everyone had such interesting books and ideas and the conversation was so rich. Just amazing. Were you at that stage? Had you already published your first children's book? I don't remember.
Yes, I had published a couple of board books for
Yeah,
babies
for
and
baby.
some chapter books, and yeah, so I had a few things published by that time.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I mean, we were talking about this before. My children are grown up. They're 22 and 25 in April. Can't believe it. But there was a time when I would go into the bookstore and usually hit on the right category of books and know what I should be, sort of gearing them towards and reading for them and all of those things. But I have to admit that there's so many different categories because I suppose children are changing and aging and have different needs so quickly at that age. So, what's the difference between a board book and a picture book? Or are they the same thing? Or is there overlap? I don't know.
So I always tell people that a board book is for our youngest readers, so 0 to 3. And
Mm,
then they laugh because they think, what are they, how are they reading? But
right.
that's a really important stage. And when you think of a baby to a 3-year-old, there's
Yeah.
a lot of growth in there. And by the time they're 3, they are really reading, like looking at pictures and pointing to words. So
Yeah.
um, that's one of the things. You can look at the
Yeah.
age, and picture books are for 4 to 8-year-olds.
Okay.
So that's
With
just that next stage up.
right.
And then the other way you can easily tell the two is I'm going to show you this one. It's called Little You
Yeah.
by Richard Van Camp and Julie Flett. And it was one of the very first board books that I actually picked up.
Mm.
So the other thing that distinguishes them is size, quite frankly. These are quite small compared to the big
Oh,
picture
yeah.
books that we see at story time in the library, the librarians. So these tend to be square
Mm.
in format. And of course the pages, they're called board books because they're very hard to
Yes.
turn the pages because
Yes.
they're very stiff.
Yeah, for
But
sure. And
I
little
love,
teeth gnaw on the edges.
yeah, but yeah, they have to be really sturdy and
Yeah.
be able to take a little flinging across the room or
That's
whatever is
right.
going
A little
on.
bit of slobber, perhaps. I remember some of my kids had some that had maybe a little felt or something they could touch or a little sensory aspect to them too, right?
Yes, and actually I've brought one of those which I call an interactive one. So these have die cut holes in them, um, things you can turn.
Love it.
So there's actually sort of three main categories under board books.
Okay.
This is more the activity, what we call an interactive book, um, where kids are yeah, like just turning the wheel to see what's behind and kind
Love
of
that.
matching, oh, a heart with a heart.
Yes.
So they're really, engaging with it.
Hmm.
So that's interactive. And then there is narrative board books, and that follows a very typical story arc, beginning, middle, and end, where a character has some sort of dilemma. In
Mm,
this one, it's a carrot that doesn't know what kind of Halloween costume to choose.
right.
It's so sweet,
Love
and
it.
he throws a big party, and he's really panicking at the end. Still can't decide, and then he just puts something together from. Oh, I'm giving the end away. Okay, spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
He put something together from all the
Oh,
costumes,
excellent.
the tutu, the whatever, the crown, the
Amazing.
anyway.
I just
Let's
love it.
that's, that's narrative, and that's familiar to a lot of writers because that's what we're writing for the older ages. We have to have a problem, we have to have a story, we have to have
Yes.
tension.
Yes. All the
Um,
things we talk about in even adult novels, right? Like it's amazing that right from the beginning, we're in, story is part of kids' lives in that way, right from the get-go. Love that.
yeah, kids are very naturally inclined for that question, what happens next?
Mm,
Turn the page.
yes.
I think I don't know if that's hardwired in us, but I see that
Yeah.
when I'm reading to kids, that eagerness to
Yeah.
see what comes next. But there is
Absolutely.
a third kind that I want to show you because it's actually the type that I write,
Yeah.
and it's called a concept book.
Mm,
So these ones are not so much built on an arc, but you grab a concept and then you just go for it.
yeah.
So yeah, this one obviously is called Beach Baby. So you can imagine that the concept is the beach.
Hmm.
And so this is the first board book that I wrote. And I had just been I live in Victoria, BC. And so we have a bunch of Gulf islands, and there's a beautiful one called Main Island. And I had been there in the spring. So I just started to think of like all the things that I saw on that island. And one of the ones that I remember seeing was the purple starfish
Mm,
at the dock. You're always waiting for a ferry when you live on an island. So that there's these beautiful purple starfish and this wonderful goose
amazing.
waddling up from the bay. And so it's just it. I really love the idea of a concept book because it's to me very poetic as well.
Hmm.
You can think about, the words that you're putting down and how you want those to sound. So to me, it was very much like writing a poem,
Mm,
a seal peering out of the waves, and a sandpiper whose peep startles your dreams. There's quite a quality to Ali Mackay's artwork that
mm.
is, I think, very luminous and dreamy.
Really, I was gonna
So
say it's
when my
dreamy.
publisher,
Yeah.
Orca Publishers, matched me up with Ellie, first of all, I was delighted because she lives in the Owen Sound area.
Oh,
And I grew up in Wyerton, not a town not too far away.
yeah.
And I thought, well, what are the chances? I'm out here on the West Coast,
Yeah.
but my very first illustrator is from, where I grew
Amazing.
up.
Yeah, it's amazing how those things happen. And it's beautiful, and the language is beautiful. And so that was the very first picture book you created. And then from there, it kind of continued. Was the next one also a board book as well, or did you move on to something else first?
Yes, so I actually wrote four in that are all they're all about taking a baby outdoors.
Mm,
So the next one was Forest Baby, about hiking through some of the gentle forests that are in and trails that are on Vancouver Island. They take you around lakes and they're really flat. And I had done a lot of hiking with my friend and her son when he was a baby. And so there was no, I didn't have a plan. Like I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to write four board books. And I certainly didn't have that arrangement with
mm,
Orca. It was just that when an idea came, I thought, okay, let's see how this goes. And
yeah,
so we ended up with Beach Baby, Forest Baby, City Baby, and Country Baby.
love that. And so when you had the idea for the next one, did you go to them and pitch them and say, "Oh, I have another idea for a book in the series," or did you have an agent, or how did that happen?
Yes, I don't have an agent for children's books. That would be great. Maybe that will happen in the future. But it's always been a very kind of organic process for me and very traditional. You know, I do what any writer can do, which is simply write a query letter to Orca. And with a board book, it's a very short manuscript.
Right,
You're looking at about 50 words in total. So
right,
you can just attach that
right.
to your query letter. And I did it very traditionally, just
Mm,
I've got this, you know, what do you think? And happily they've seemed to like the ideas. I should mention that when I first started with Orca books, they I would just send in when I was ready, I would send in a manuscript. But now they, like many other publishers, they have a window that they open
yes.
for submission, and you can, you know, find that on their website. But Orca opens a window of about a month or two, twice a year.
Yes,
So
a
that's
lot of
something.
publishers are doing that, which is that's interesting because a lot of Canadian authors don't have agents, and we don't have a particularly big number of literary agents even in Canada. So many authors are unagented, but there are ways to query those publishers without having an agent, which is amazing. Just keeping an eye for those due dates.
Yes, and what I do is I have a calendar and like just an old-fashioned paper
Yeah,
calendar that I've started to write on the submission openings. Like this month is March, and Groundwood has been opened for submissions, and it'll
right,
close March 31st.
right.
So I just write that on the calendar. And even though maybe next year it changes for them, I sort of have an idea of when it
Yes,
happened
yeah,
last year because you just don't want to miss those opportunities
yeah.
to send in your picture book or your middle grade novel.
Amazing. And it gives you a sort of a deadline to work towards if you want to have something, out and about, like being querying something. Sometimes it takes a lot longer to get something prepared than we anticipate, but just knowing that that's coming might spur you on to get something finished, or get those last minute touches on it before you send it away. So that's really good to think about for
Yeah,
sure.
deadlines are so important,
Oh,
aren't they?
so important, and so important to send out your books for sure. I did want to ask you about Country Baby. I think you have a kind of a particular structure for that book. Did you want to mention that one?
Yes, I'm going to grab that one. So I don't know if you'll notice, but this is a slightly smaller format. So again, over the years, as a writer, you're going to meet a lot of changes from the publisher. Beach Baby is just a little bit bigger, and it's a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So I mentioned that because I just want to show you how we collapsed or compressed a couple things. So
Okay.
when I wrote that manuscript, I think I wrote it more in the other format when I had a few more pages to
Mm,
work with. And I was just thinking of a day in the life of a child on a farm.
mm.
And I really want to write a book that traditionally there's a lot of children's books about farms,
Right.
let's just say.
Yes.
But traditionally, they either feature a protagonist that is an adult, so you'll see the farmer and the animals and follow the farmer around, or the protagonist is an animal and you
Mm,
see the world through the lens of a pig or a chicken or something.
right.
But I did not find very many books that actually looked at the world with a baby's perspective. And when I thought about that, I first of all, I grew up in the country, so I'm familiar with the landscape, and it's not the safest place for babies to roam
Right.
and ramble. So
Sure.
I really had to think about what was appropriate for a little one to do on a farm.
Mm,
So that was a good challenge. And I just started with these simple things like little ones can collect eggs at the chicken coop.
mm.
And again, I just love these
I do
illustrations.
too.
They're
Just
they're
love
so
it.
charming.
Yes.
My author had a different one for each board book.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is Ellen Rooney,
Oh, lovely.
and she did a wonderful job. And they're all four books are collage style. So even though they chose different illustrators, they stuck with a similar style of
Right.
illustration.
So
And I
beautiful.
had to tell you the story behind this one. So this says the sheep's wool is cozy, cozy. And I was actually talking to my hygienist, when they're cleaning your teeth and you
Yeah.
can't talk much.
Right.
I knew she lived in the country. And I said to her, "What do you do with your little boy?" And she said, "Oh, he loves to go to the neighbors and see the sheep. And he always says, cozy, cozy."
Oh, I love
So
it.
writers are, we're kind of like magpies. We do pick up lots of things. So
Absolutely.
yeah, this is over the course of a day, and you see them, doing things. And the level is a child's level. They're down low.
Yeah.
So I got down low, and we call it meeting children where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, they like to
Love
get
that.
dirty and
Yeah.
get in get into the garden. So, and
Amazing.
then eventually I want to work to indoors where things get cozy. And I really wanted to have a spread. So this is called a spread when you're talking about both pages at once. I wanted to have a spread where they were making cookies together in the shapes of stars and hearts. And because this was a smaller and shorter format, we had to drop that line in the text. So this one says, "Back home, we hang socks to dry." But
Mm-hmm.
if you look at it, the illustrator brought in, because she saw that original, she brought in the cookies
Yes.
nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought in the ideas of hearts and stars at the very end. Um, with just like the little twinkling stars outside.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it was, and the heart. Do you see like the little heart
There
on
it
the
is.
bed?
Yes. Beautiful.
So I just felt she was really honoring my words.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
even the ones that didn't make it into the final
Yeah.
story.
Amazing. So do you get to see the illustrations at all during the process? Is there a little bit of say in what the final thing looks like, or is that kind of all a surprise at the end and you say, "Oh, that's what my book looks like now."
Um, I'm so glad you asked about illustrators and that relationship between writer and illustrator. So first of all, as a writer, well, this has been my experience. I don't get to choose the illustrator.
Mhm.
Orca comes to me and says, "Okay, we've got a great illustrator for you." And I've never said no. I
Mhm.
always go to their Instagram and look at what they're doing.
Right. Yes.
And it's always been a wonderful match.
Mhm.
And that's really important to pause and talk about because a children's writer who's doing picture books, must really understand that there's expertise that we don't have. We're writers, but the editor has a concept that she wants to bring across, and then there's an art designer and an illustrator.
Right.
So there's four people on the team, and so I've told who's I'm working with. Well, I'm not working with them. I
Mhm.
basically never talk to the illustrator at all.
Okay.
I only talk to the editor.
Right.
So at a certain point down the road, then I get to see line sketches of each spread. And that's always a really exciting moment. There's no color, but it's pretty much finished sketches. And you can bet that on the other side of it, between the editor, art director, and the illustrator, they've been having many
Right.
conversations to get to the point that they're going to show it to me.
Right.
But I do have input at that point. Like if there's something um, that I'm trying to think of something that I mentioned or changed. Gosh, you can see it's very little that I can't even think of a single
Mhm.
thing in here.
Yeah.
But um,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Amazing.
there might be some small thing that I say, but it's very rare at that stage. I will give you an example, though, of something. When I submit a manuscript, I'm submitting the words, but I can also do a few art notes at the very beginning of the
Okay.
process. So
Yeah.
that's where, as a writer, you can have input even before they've hired an illustrator. So I would love to show you
Mhm.
an art note. I keep my art notes very spare. But when designing City Baby, they go at the end to a festival. And I really wanted to honor my mother-in-law, who is Mexican.
Okay.
So it could have been any festival,
Beautiful.
but I
Yeah.
really loved this
I love that.
particular dress and to honor her Mexican heritage and ours heritage.
Mhm.
So I put a little art note. Could we
Yeah.
please do it this way?
Oh, I just love that. That's amazing. And I love that it's a team and everyone has a role to play and you trust each other's expertise. Because I know that you also are a beautiful artist. I've seen your lovely drawings that you do on Substack, and you do have an eye for art as well. But to know that your illustrators are taking, they've been selected and they're taking on your words and making that story come to life, and it's like a real team effort in the end. I think that's amazing, and I'm not sure that a lot of folks who would like to write picture books kind of are aware of that. So that's really enlightening for me too. I have never really thought about that process too much. So that's really amazing to think about. Like there's a lot. That's a lot
There's a
to
lot
consider.
to writing picture books for sure.
Yeah,
And of course, there's also author illustrators who do both.
true.
And so then their process is very different.
Right,
They submit what we call a dummy, which is the words, but also they'll submit a few pages
right.
of sketches and character sketches. And so,
Interesting. Okay. So that it's that combination that the publishers are looking at, whether
yeah.
I wonder, I don't know if you'll know this, but I wonder if there's cases where somebody might submit a book like that with their illustrations and the publisher says, well, no, actually, but we'll take the words, but we'll get another illustrator. Or is it always a done deal? I don't know.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure there's cases of that.
Yeah.
But I think there are more cases where they would simply pass
Right. Right.
and just
No.
and so that you can go on to a publisher who does. love both.
Yes.
And you certainly want your editor just, yeah, to be 100%
That's,
behind your illustrations and your
yeah,
words and the way they're
that's a good
working
point.
together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, so you also write chapter books, and so we kind of know picture. So we have board books and picture books, and then we get into chapter books, which is a whole other category of age. Oh, can you tell us about that? How are they different?
Yeah, so let's start with age range because I always think that sort of grounds us and helps. So age 6 to about 9 is for the chapter book crowd. And they're the readers who are they're reading themselves and they're often reading to younger kids. I had a beautiful moment. There's a festival in Toronto called the Forest of Trees, or oh gosh, I'm
Oh,
gonna
I feel like that's, yeah, I forget
is
what the name
that
is,
it?
but that seems familiar to me too. Slipping my mind.
We'll look that
We'll
up.
look it up.
But
Show notes.
um, anyway, I had the honor of going there with this book, Where's Burgess, and a grade 4 student, so he would be about 9. He said he read it to his younger brother. And I was so touched because this is a book that sort of, I would love to tell you how it came together, but the premise, which you should be able to say in a few words, is boy loses frog. Right? So
Okay.
that's the premise.
Love that.
But it is about, so the concept is loss. And I layered in the fact that Reese's parents are separating. So there is a deeper loss to the story. And that's why this older boy read it to his younger brother because their parents were
Oh,
divorcing, he told me.
right.
So,
So he
yes.
got
So,
it. He understood it and wanted to help his brother. That is amazing.
yeah. So having that opportunity to hear kids and hear their reactions, that's just, yeah, priceless. But I
Amazing.
would love to tell you how this one
Yeah,
came. I
please.
feel like my story as a writer as a children's writer is so haphazard that I just fall into these things. But so once again, I was off on a ferry to Salt Spring Island with my husband, and we were waiting for the ferry, and we were reading those lovely community boards that are full of posters and things. And there was this very bright poster that said, "Lost Frog," named Burgess, might be scared, call. And we laughed about it, and my husband said, "Oh, that would make a good children's story."
Really is.
Yeah. So I took the poster because it was so unusual. It wasn't made by a child. It was glossy. It was slick. I
Yeah.
thought, what's behind this? So I took it and I put it on my own cork board. And anyway, I kept looking at it, and it inspired me to like, okay, boy loses frog. What's this about? And I started to think, well, what are the chances he's going to find the frog if he has lost it? Not very good. And so that led me into the idea of a story about loss, and and then to the parents. Like I thought, okay, I my own situation is that I'm a stepmom, and my stepkids have gone through divorce. So I thought, yeah, I think I might want to write about this from a little boy's perspective of how it feels, but set it in Victoria, set it in our city. And so he goes about the city looking all over for his frog. But in the meantime, he meets another little boy, Aaron, at school. And I want to tell you about this because As I was writing this story, I looked at the submission guidelines. Always do that.
Yeah.
What is the publisher looking for in terms of length? How many chapters? These are about eight. Well, I'll give you the story. It was 6,000 words on the site, 6,000 words, which is, say about 6 to 7 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wrote. I wrote to the specifics, and I sent in the manuscript. And the editor at Orca liked the story, but she said, we've changed our submission guidelines, and now it's 8,000 words.
Okay.
So she said, that other little boy that Reese meets, Aaron, I think could we do something with him? And Aaron always wears a bathrobe. I don't know if you've ever met kids who come to school and they just have a favorite thing to wear.
100%. Even in
So,
high school, that happens.
okay, so I was going to say, I've spent a lot of time, as you know, as a college writing instructor,
Yes.
and college students do this. They'll come in and for 4 months, they'll wear ears,
Hmm.
or, a hood with little, yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
right? There's just
absolutely.
something they love. And of course, that resonates with me. I love it, right?
Yeah,
It's all about personality and individuality.
yeah.
So I thought I just stuck this little boy in, and he always wears a different bathrobe to school. Okay, so Aaron meets him. He was just this tiny little minor character at the beginning of the book. So he was easy to start to weave in. And what Reese learns is that Aaron cannot ride a bike. He's really struggling to learn,
Mm.
and which is a struggle that I had and still have. I'm one of the few people who just cannot ride a bike without falling over. So I thought I'm going to give that problem to
Yes.
poor little Aaron. But then Reese and Aaron have this friendship. So at the end, although Reese loses his frog, I'm sorry, again, spoiler alert, he doesn't find his frog. His parents are going through a divorce, but he makes this such a good friendship
Hmm.
throughout the story, so that the final scene is not about parents or frogs at all. It's about these two boys racing down a bicycle trail, the wind in their hair, and just going for it.
Love that.
And it's just this lovely
Yeah.
moment of friendship.
Yeah. Connection and hope and all the things that you don't feel when you've lost something you love or a relationship around you has fallen apart. I just think that's incredible. I love that when you describe all of your stories, you have a connection to place or like it show like you're so observant about the world you live in and the natural elements, and they come into your stories, or just not riding a bike yourself thinking, okay, that could be for my character. So drawing on your own life and your experiences and reinventing them for fiction and for your characters. I think that's a great place to start for writers when they like, what do I write about? Well, mine your own experiences and the places you live and what you see every day, and that you saw that poster and it became a reminder, right?
I have to show you. Oh, yes, I have to get back to the poster for a couple of reasons. So, chapter books have pictures in them. Not very many, but they are black and white line drawings. So, this is the wonderful
Oh,
picture
amazing.
that
Lost
David
frog
Parkins did.
with a great little frog just looking wide-eyed. It's great.
So, yes. So, oh gosh, I just want to say so many things, but let me tell you about that poster. I
Yeah.
actually looked it up online. It was Lost Frog was the name of a band. It
Oh,
was
you're
it
kidding.
was promoting a band. So that was really fun to track that
Clever.
poster down.
Amazing. That's so clever because obviously it drew attention to it, right? That's a great idea.
Yeah. So that was that. But you were talking about, yeah, taking things from your own childhood.
Mm,
And writers really do have the freedom at that point. Either take it and use it, and if it's a struggle, use the struggle. I mean, that's so authentic and it's going to come through in the words. So that's a great idea. But
mm,
I also, as a writer of children's stories, I rewrite things in the past. Like, I don't know, I'll just give you the example. Like, maybe I had a teacher in grade 4 who was really strict and hard, and I'll rewrite that teacher to be like the best teacher you can imagine because I
right.
want to give my characters that experience of
Yes.
just being in a really nurturing environment. And so I love the opportunity, yes, to mine your own stories, but also to rewrite your childhood and give your inner self, like that
Love
amazing
that.
teacher that you always wanted, the one that read books to you and
Oh,
had classrooms full of really interesting objects. And
yeah.
I,
I
I,
think
oh, I
that's
have to tell you this story.
beautiful. Mm,
I have a granddaughter and she is 10. And I went to her school. We were picking her up for to take her to lunch.
mm,
And we had a little time. And the, the school has a lot of, I guess, portables, like a lot of little buildings with classrooms.
right.
And
Hmm.
all the kids were in assembly and the doors to the classrooms were open.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm a writer. I've got my phone. I really need to know not what classrooms looked like when I was a kid, but right now, what
Yeah.
are they, where does the backpack go?
Right.
It's hung on a hook outside the room. What's on the walls. So I took my camera and I quickly took lots of pictures of the guinea pig pet, of the
Yes.
names, all these pictures. And I was so happy with myself. So
Yeah.
later we're eating with my granddaughter Taylor, and I told her what I did. And she goes, Grandma, you know they have cameras everywhere. And so I got that
Uh,
immediate, like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I went, it wasn't even her classroom.
oh,
I
that's
took
so
a whole
funny.
bunch of pictures. And
Uh,
then I guess I must have looked quite stricken because she said, it's okay, Grandma. It was Grandparents' Day. That's one of the
uh,
reasons we
uh,
went there. She said,
yes.
I think they expect grandparents to be roaming around doing things.
Of course, it'll be fine, she assures you.
She
But again,
reassured.
just having all of those, like that eye for, oh, this could be something I might want for a story. This might help me understand how to frame it and what that looks like. Because you're right, like the classrooms of our generation are to some extent they're recognizable, but in lots of ways not. Like it's really changed, and the
So
environments are
changed.
sort of more beautiful and more.
Oh yeah,
um,
and the computer cart
yeah.
in the corner and then they were in the desks were in groups, and each student had a basket with their headphones in
Yes,
it and
right.
their
We didn't have those.
pencils, and oh, it was really, and different chairs for
Yeah.
different kids. Like the bouncy yoga ball.
Yes. Yeah.
You can put that into a chair-like structure, but you're
Yeah.
actually sitting on the ball
That's right.
for
Yeah.
some more active kids. And yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I guess that's the topic of research.
I
How
feel like that's the research trip right there. Just go into classrooms and take a look and spend time where kids are, right? Like if you're at the park with your granddaughter, just be paying attention to what kids are doing. And I mean, we always talk about that with writers. If you're anywhere out in the world, just be kind of half an ear on people's conversations and just the flow of what they're talking about, and that can help us, right, be more authentic. So I love that you took pictures in the classroom. That's great. There's stories everywhere. We just have to be mindful and keep an eye out for things. I love that so much. Um, and I wanted to ask you, you have another picture book coming out soon. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So I retired a couple of years ago, and that gave me a bit more time to really dive into picture books because I know that they're a tough one to get published.
Mm,
So again, we're talking about that bigger book.
mm.
They cost a lot for publishers to make, so I can understand why they're so picky. I pulled this one up because it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, so beautiful.
It's by Jean E. Penswall and Todd Stewart, and it really speaks to me and my background because I grew up in Ontario and it was always snowy, and I grew up close to Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. So this is actually Lake Superior, but it is the landscape and so much my experience.
For sure.
So when you look at these pages, now you're in that definitely paper, easier to turn.
Mhm.
Big, big illustrations. These are called picture books because the pictures are doing 50% of the storytelling. And then, of course, you've got words working together. I just have to read this. We sit on the shore in the shadow of ancient cliffs and lace our skates. I help you with yours when your fingers grow numb.
So
It's just two kids out together, no adults. I mean, you almost hear the hush of the
right.
forest.
Mhm.
So I just thought to publish a picture book would be fantastic. So I basically went back to school, picture book school.
Okay.
And
What does
there's
that
a
look like?
well, it was kind of COVID time. Everyone was online, and I found this online school called the Storyteller Academy, and I stayed with them for a few years, taking all their classes, um, falling into deeply into the picture book world. And I wrote a manuscript, and happily, I sent it to Orca, and the editor, Sarah Howden, accepted it.
Yay.
So it's a really good, I guess, good story. It has this happy ending
Mm,
that I wrote it, I got it accepted.
great.
But that journey for picture book writers is one I would love to talk to you about another time because
Absolutely.
well, I just want to say, I want to give this one tip.
Okay.
If you're interested in writing picture books, it's like writing poems. You would never just write one poem and send it out to a publisher, and if it got rejected, think, I guess I'm not so good at this. You would write hundreds of poems,
For
and
sure.
it's the same with picture books. I write many manuscripts. Um, like I actually try to write one a month
Mm,
so that I write bad ones. I write ones that by the time I've written it and I look online, it's out there.
right.
So anyway, that's my one tip. Just
That's really great advice.
have
Yeah.
fun and write lots of messy children's book manuscripts and then send them out. So I had this idea that I love creating things. Like I love to draw, I love to write. So again, I wanted to pick some little person, my protagonist, who's not too far out of who I am, because I'm just trying this for the first time. So I invented a little girl, and the first version of it, she simply had a purple crayon, and I called this the purple blob. And I had an idea that she drew a monster and it came to life. It leapt off the page and it hid in the laundry. It was pretty, pretty basic story. And then as I began to work with it, I developed the idea that wouldn't it be fun if it wasn't just a crayon and a piece of paper? If she was kind of like really interested in science and building things and she really wants to build something, a monster. And I'm thinking, monster, little girl, oh,
Ah,
Frankenstein. So I called it Dr. Lila Frankenstein, and it's about a little girl who who creates a monster, and the monster comes to life.
Nice.
So, one of the things about picture books that you'll learn is that they have layers.
Hmm.
So, by layering the allusions to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it just kind of adds another fun element. And I feel for adults too,
Sure.
like of course, I'm going to have now set it with thunder and lightning on a rainy day. I didn't have that before, but I want the bolts of lightning. So it was really fun to then mash together that. And I wouldn't call it a retelling. I think it's really a friendship story between a little girl and a monster, but it does have these, there's the point where she says, it's
It's
alive.
alive. I love nods like that in different pieces of art and music and movies and all, like where there's just these little nods from one thing to something else that happened before or somebody else's piece. And I love that because a kid reading this someday will come across Frankenstein or something else that, is in that zone, and we'll just kind of be like, oh, it reminds me about the book I read when I was a kid. Like there's just those like little wee connections that make everything so special. And culturally, like I think we look for those patterns too, right? We kind of look, ah, oh, this is like that and that's like that, and just something about it just tweaks for us. So I love that idea, and that she would be so creative and curious and interested in science and all of those delightful
Right. So
things for a
that's
little
another
girl.
layer. Like that's the girls in science layer,
Yes,
the feminist little girls can do anything
yes,
layer. And
100%.
so picture books are built like that. And that's why people read them multiple times
Right.
and use them. Teachers use them in so many ways.
Mhm.
Um, that was one of the reasons I recently went to Reading for the Love of It conference. I wanted to find out how the teachers were using picture books.
Mhm.
And they, it isn't just like, okay, well, this was a big takeaway for me for the conference. Yes, they still go to the carpet. It's story time, but it's the way now that those books are left in the classroom so that students can go to them on their own, and then they're embedded into a writing exercise or a discussion about who knows, maybe difference, but a friendship between a little girl and a monster. What are the challenges of that friendship, and what are the benefits? So picture books do a lot of work. And even at the high school level, I feel like if you are reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or at the college level, it would be fun as a teacher to bring in a picture book and say, look at culturally how widespread this story that was originally written in 1818, it's in picture books, it's in, crazy movies like Young Frankenstein. Like, wouldn't that be
Right.
an awesome unit at a high school or
Absolutely.
college level?
Amazing. Yeah, it's very true. And that Reading for the Love of It, for folks that don't know, it's a really amazing conference in Toronto that happens every year. I've been a couple of times, and great guest speakers and authors at different levels and teachers from all over the country come to hear about those books and think about how they can use things in their curriculum. It's just like just a magical place to meet folks. And I actually saw you there this year, which was so lovely because we haven't seen each other in person in years. And I think, if anyone can make it out to that conference, it's well worth it to check it out. And I know I'm always inspired when I hear speakers there. They're just incredible. And
And all the books that you get to hear
so
about,
good.
and you go
Absolutely.
home with, I mean, you can't help
I
but
know.
go home with memoirs and
That's
picture
right.
books and
It's
middle grade
true.
novels, everything that's
Yeah.
exciting and new. And
Yeah. But I think what you're saying, that's so important, especially for people who are thinking about writing books for children, whether board books or picture books or chapter books, is that it's not just beautiful pictures with a few words. It's really like what else is happening here, like that layering of ideas and like I we talk about it as what's your point? Like, what are you trying to say with this book, like as an author? And not that you're trying to hammer anyone's like over the head with that with the message, but it's that it's there and people can read and understand lots of things having um read the story and understanding those characters. So I think that's such an important point because I have this thought that a lot of folks think it's really easy. And I think it's really hard.
Yeah, I think I find it really hard, and it takes me a long time to be happy enough with something I'm writing to send it away. So I'm definitely not quantity. I'm more
Yeah.
about, okay, maybe I'll get, a book out every 3 years. So
And
yeah.
do you keep all of that backlog and go back into them and say, okay, I think I know what I want to do with this now? Like, do you ever go back and say, oh, it's been 3 years, but I'm going to go back to this draft. I know now, right? Like just getting an inspiration to change it or revise it or whatever is going to happen. Does that happen at all? Or is it sort of like, I'm done, I'm leaving that there, just keep moving forward?
Absolutely the first where they're all on the computer and um, yeah, I'll go back and revisit them because as you know, when you have a draft of a story, you put so much work into creating the world and creating the characters. Even if the story is not working, um, it's good to go back and use some of that hard-earned
Yeah,
creativity. And
absolutely.
re my friend and I call it repurposing.
Yes. Yes. Love
Yes, I'm
that.
going to take that scene and repurpose it, or I'm going to take that manuscript. And
Right.
you also don't know if the story, where is it going to land? Like you think you're writing a picture book, and then as a writer, I'll think this would make a better chapter book.
Oh, yeah,
This would make
yeah.
a good middle grade. So I've talked to a lot of writers who have set out to write a particular format, but then the story itself,
Brings
demands
you.
something else.
Yeah, as they
So,
do. The characters tell you, no, we're doing this now. And we're the story. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I always tell writers too when they're deleting things or when they're getting rid of sections of their novels, don't actually delete them. Just put them in another file. You don't know when you're gonna be like, no, I need that scene or I need that part over here, or actually this is gonna be somewhere else. Like you do actually revisit your own words and pull from them and be inspired by them or tweak them and change them. So I think that's a great idea that you have. Like all of those stories aren't gone, they're just resting somewhere, percolating in the back of your mind, perhaps.
yes,
Amazing. I love
I would
that.
love to give another tip as you're
Yes,
talking. I'm
please.
thinking, um, I don't know if this will resonate with any of your writers, but I've been working right now on a middle grade novel, and having a bit of trouble with it. And my friend said, well, just write it as a picture book, like just sit down and write the whole thing as if you're writing a picture book, and then you'd have the whole story. I thought, "Oh, it's such a good idea because I'm the kind of writer that just gets stuck in the beginning
Mm,
and revising that beginning. And
right.
so it's really hard for me. I know people say, write a messy first draft, just get Benny, but it's so hard for me to work on an end if the end isn't working.
Right. Right.
So anyway, I thought, well, what a great idea. So I had this middle grade, but I thought, I don't want to go as short as a picture book, but what if I wrote it as chapter book? So rather than 25,000 words, I tried it as an 8,000 word book. Maybe I could just get the whole thing down.
Mhm.
And so I did that in a month. I put it down as a chapter book. And that allowed me to get into the end a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah.
Thank goodness to see where the ending was and some of the events that happened.
Mm.
But then when I read it as a chapter book, I thought, nope, it's not a chapter book because I've lost so much good stuff. So
Okay.
back to writing it as a middle grade, but at least I have this kind of blueprint that I can follow.
Love
So
that.
maybe that will help readers if they're struggling with a story to either write it so small that it's a picture book
Yes.
And again, you don't have to keep it as a picture book. It's just like a little blueprint.
That's
So
a really wise idea, I think, for any writer of any length book, like a novel, a memoir, nonfiction, is write the short version. Like just write the short version, know what's coming next, know how it ends. No, I think knowing how it ends is important because how do we get there if we don't know how it ends? And then you can pull it open and do all the things you need to do with it. I think that's such great advice. I'm going to do that maybe later with my struggling with a little part about my half of a manuscript. I'm like, oh, I need to really, really sort this out. But maybe I just need to do that, write it as a short little piece so that I can have it in my brain and then pull it open. I love this. I think that is advice for all of us that we should take. Um Lori, what is you have so many great tips and so much great experience, and I just so appreciate it. If you were thinking about somebody out there who is maybe working on their first children's book, maybe have had a dream to write a book, and there's a lot of choices and a lot of there's a lot of information out there, but it's really hard to know where to get started. What would you suggest folks do just to get their feet wet?
yeah, that's such a good question. Um, so there are a lot of good workshops being offered online. And so I would poke around a bit and look at SCWBI, Society Writers, Children's Writers, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, this I have it here. The Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So they're a big organization, and they are in Canada. There's a Canada West and a Canada East. But being a member, it's not very much money for the year. It allows you to access online courses offered out of any of like Indiana or a lot of the really active chapters of this group. And I've really enjoyed taking a few of those courses. You don't even have to be a member of it. You can pay the non-member fee, but
Okay.
being a member, you learn about these workshops.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a big one for workshops
Hmm.
because I think they allow you to meet other children's book writers.
Hmm.
So it's kind of hard in person to put a group of children's picture book writers together because it is a bit niche.
Mm.
So this way you can put an online picture book group together. So I have one of those, and our members are in Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, Victoria, and but we critique our manuscripts once a month together. We're a wonderful support for each other. So take some workshops, meet other book writers, put your critique group together, and read a lot of picture books. It's
Yeah.
really simple to take them out of the library, or if you go on YouTube, a lot of them are read aloud on YouTube. So you can get a good sense, like a really quick sense of the kind of stories people are writing right now. That's really important as a picture book writer to not be referencing books that are even 5 years old. You really want to be reading the ones that are 2024, 2025, and
Yeah.
know, who's out there and what kind of books librarians and teachers are buying and publishers are publishing. And and also, I don't really think, or I don't know of, how to write a picture book.
Right.
I'm sure they're out there, but I also think the best way is to use your picture books as mentor texts and just look closely at what the writers are doing. I think that's the best way to learn how to how to tell your story.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And if there aren't that many books about how to write a children's book, I don't know, Lori, that might have to be on your list. Things to do. No pressure. Down the
Uh,
road.
Down the road when I got a few more
Right, right.
under my
But
belt.
I totally agree about writers need to read. They need to read in your genre, read outside your genre, read like current stuff, know what's being published. Like it's just part of what we need to do as authors to figure out um craft and storytelling and to understand the publishing industry because that's the whole other end of the business end, right? Like we do need to tackle that too and understand how publishers select books and literary agents and all those things. But just delightful. It's been so fun for me over the years to watch as your books have been coming out and just loving to see your journey as a children's author and following you on your lovely Substack, which I'll put in the show notes as well, so folks can see you there. And so delightful chatting with you. As always, I always love seeing you, but this was so fun. And I think it really cleared up a lot of things about um, children's book writing. And I'm hoping that lots of folks who are inspired to write children's books, I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from your wisdom and expertise on this topic. So thanks, Lori. And I can't wait to have you back when your book comes out later
Dr.
down.
Lila Frankenstein,
Yay! So
2026.
exciting. Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
Lori.
you. Thank you for this opportunity,
Oh,
Lisa.
my
I've so
pleasure.
enjoyed looking at your other guests and this is just a brilliant thing to learn about
Thank you.
writing from. So I'm so glad you
I
came.
appreciate that. I really do. Thanks so much, Lori.
Okay, bye for now.
Do you have writing goals that you want to achieve in 2025? If you need support, encouragement, accountability, and community, join the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi weekly to set writing goals and get pages done. Go to Women Writing on Substack and subscribe. Let's create a little magic this year. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.